August 17th, 1944. Northern France, near Flores. The muddy landscape of post-invasion Europe bore the scars of relentless warfare. A General Motors CCKW-21 2-ton truck sat abandoned on the roadside, its canvas cover torn by shrapnel, the engine still warm from the recent German Luftwaffe strafing run. These aircraft appearances had become increasingly rare over France by midsummer 1944, a sign of American air superiority that was reshaping the nature of ground warfare. The American convoy this truck belonged to had been caught in one of the last coordinated German air attacks against Allied supply lines. Wehrmacht mechanics from the 276th Infantry Division, veterans of years of grueling warfare, approached the abandoned vehicle cautiously. To the Americans, this truck had a simple nickname, the Deuce and a Half, referring to its 2.5-ton cargo capacity. To the Germans, it represented something far more sinister, a material philosophy they could neither match nor overcome. The experienced mechanics opened the engine compartment and immediately recognized something unexpected. Clarity. Every component was accessible. Every bolt was the same size. Every nut could be turned with the same standard wrench. The spark plugs were positioned for easy removal, and remarkably, the oil filter could be changed without any specialized tools. One senior mechanic, a former engineer at the Opelwerk Brandenburg plant, opened the technical manual mounted in the cab. The document was printed on quality paper with detailed illustrations showing every maintenance procedure. "Look at this," he said, his voice carrying a mixture of professional admiration and professional dread. "Everything is explained with pictures. A child could follow these instructions." Over the next hour, their examination revealed a truth that would transform their understanding of why Germany was losing this war. Not primarily on the battlefields where German courage and training remained formidable, but in the factories of Detroit, where a fundamentally different approach to industrial production was unfolding at an unprecedented scale. The truck bore markings indicating it was a 1943 model, CCKW 353, the long wheelbase variant. Production number stamps showed it was one of thousands built that year at the Pontiac, plant thousands from a single factory in a single year, a figure that exceeded Germany's entire truck production capacity. The GMC 270 engine produced 104 horsepower from 269 cubic inches of displacement. Not impressive by German engineering standards, which prided themselves on extracting maximum performance from every component. But the German mechanics immediately understood that this was not the goal. Instead, the design reflected something fundamentally different, an approach to engineering for an army of millions where most recruits weren't trained mechanics. The transmission was a simple Warner T93 5-speed design. The transfer case engaged the front axle with a single lever, enabling full 6-wheel drive with remarkable ease. The suspension used basic leaf springs, crude but essentially unbreakable, capable of being straightened with a rock if necessary. The frame was a simple welded ladder frame straight channel steel that any structural steel plant could produce in massive quantities. One mechanic made an observation that his superiors would later codify in formal reports. "This is designed for idiots." A senior officer from the supply section corrected him sharply. "No, this is designed for an army of millions where most men aren't mechanics. This is brilliant engineering, just not the kind we were trained to admire." He was absolutely right. The GMC represented a completely different manufacturing philosophy than the one Germany had perfected. While German engineers had optimized individual vehicles for elegance and performance, American engineers had optimized an entire production ecosystem for standardization, replaceability, and mass production. The six-wheel drive system provided traction that the Opel Blitz's conventional rear-wheel drive configuration could never match, especially in the infamous French mud that had plagued German logistics since the invasion. The German truck could manage perhaps 30 kilometers per day over poor roads. The GMC powered through terrain that would immobilize German vehicles, delivering supplies at unprecedented speeds. That evening, the unit's supply officer, a man who had worked in the Opel plant in Brandenburg before the war and therefore understood automotive manufacturing deeply, joined the inspection. "We're looking at this wrong," he announced to the gathered mechanics. "We see a simple truck, but what this represents is an entire manufacturing philosophy we cannot possibly match." He explained what the GMC revealed about American production capabilities that Germany could not replicate. The stamped steel body panels were crude by German standards, but could be produced in vast quantities by any press shop equipped with hydraulic equipment. The wooden cargo bed used standard commercial lumber that any sawmill could provide, no specialized fabrication required. The canvas top was commercial fabric available from any textile manufacturer. Nothing was exotic. Nothing required specialty knowledge. Nothing was scarce or difficult to obtain. The chassis was a masterpiece of simplicity, straight channel steel welded together in a ladder frame. Any structural steel plant could produce these frames in unlimited quantities. The officer did calculations that night that would later be documented in intelligence reports. In 1943 alone, Germany produced approximately 27,000 Opel Blitz trucks. The Americans likely built 20 times that number of GMC trucks from GMC alone, not counting the vehicles produced by Chevrolet, International Harvester, Studebaker, Dodge, and Ford. The actual numbers were even more staggering than his estimate. During 1944, GMC built approximately 150,000 trucks at the Pontiac facility alone. Chevrolet contributed another significant portion from its assembly plants. By war's end, over 562,650 GMC CCKW trucks in all variants would be produced between 1941 and 1945, the vast majority of which were the CCKW 353 long wheelbase model. The calculations that evening became increasingly dark as officers examined the broader implications. The United States had dozens of automotive manufacturing complexes, each as large or larger than the Opel Werk Brandenburg. General Motors, Ford, Studebaker, International Harvester, Dodge, and Chevrolet were all producing similar vehicles to standardized military specifications, all with interchangeable parts. A carburetor from one manufacturer could be substituted for another. Electrical components were standardized across production lines. Even tires were the same size across different manufacturers. The German automotive industry, by contrast, consisted of a collection of manufacturers, each producing vehicles with incompatible parts. A mechanic trained on the Opel Blitz might not be able to maintain a Magirus or Mercedes truck. Parts warehouses had to maintain inventory for hundreds of different vehicle types. It was a logistical nightmare of Byzantine complexity. The supply officer's assessment crystallized a grim reality. Look at the chassis. Straight channel steel welded together. Any structural steel plant could produce these. Compare that to our Opel with its precisely formed frame rails requiring specialized dies. We designed our vehicles to be good. They designed theirs to be good enough, but in overwhelming numbers. Over the following week, the German unit used the captured GMC for supply operations. It transformed their capabilities completely. Where their Opel trucks struggled through muddy farm roads, requiring careful navigation and sometimes becoming stuck despite their German engineering, the GMC simply powered through. When overloaded beyond its rated capacity, something that happened constantly in war, it continued functioning reliably. The six-wheel drive provided traction that German rear-wheel drive vehicles couldn't begin to match. A veteran supply sergeant offered his assessment after driving it daily. This truck is reliable in a way our vehicles aren't. It's not that it's better built, it's that it's built expecting abuse. They designed it knowing soldiers would overload it, neglect maintenance, and drive it like they're trying to destroy it. That was the insight. American engineers designed the GMC for the reality of war, not the theory of it. On August 25, 1944, the same day the famous Red Ball Express began operations, the 276th Infantry Division received orders to move eastward as American forces consolidated their breakout from Normandy. What they witnessed on the parallel roads completed their education in American logistics. An American supply column passed on a route parallel to their movement, not a tactical convoy, but a logistics column. Truck after truck after truck stretched to the horizon, all identical, all loaded with supplies, all rolling toward the front with mechanical precision. One young German soldier asked the question that revealed the fundamental difference between the two armies. Where are their horses? The supply officer realized the significance of the question. The young soldier had never seen a fully motorized army because he had never encountered one. In the Wehrmacht, approximately 80% of logistics relied on horses. The 276th Infantry Division alone required over 5,000 horses just to move supplies. Those horses needed food, water, veterinary care, and could march perhaps 30 kilometers per day under good conditions. In the brutal Russian winter of 1942-43, thousands had died, requiring constant replacement from farms across occupied Europe. American divisions had no horses. They had trucks. Thousands of trucks that could move hundreds of kilometers per day, required no fodder, didn't tire, and didn't freeze to death in winter conditions. Each American division had approximately 2,000 trucks. With 40 divisions in France by late 1944, that represented approximately 80,000 trucks supporting combat operations, not counting the supply services. Germany had 3 million horses across all fronts and perhaps 100,000 trucks total. The material disparity was staggering and, ultimately, insurmountable. The American automotive plants had been designed for mass production long before the war. Ford's assembly line, General Motors' production systems, Chrysler's manufacturing expertise. When war came, these facilities simply converted civilian production to military needs. The same factories that built Chevrolet sedans built GMC trucks. The same workers who assembled Oldsmobiles assembled military vehicles. The transition was seamless because the manufacturing philosophy was identical. Standardization, interchangeability, mass production. Germany possessed excellent engineers who could design vehicles superior in many respects to American trucks. The Opel Blitz was, by any reasonable assessment, a well-engineered vehicle. But German industry lacked the production infrastructure, the standardization philosophy, and the resource abundance to match American manufacturing capacity. The Opel Werk Brandenburg, even at peak production, couldn't match a single American automotive complex. America had dozens of such complexes, and all of them were operating at unprecedented capacity. By September 1944, the unit had captured 3 more GMC trucks and a Dodge WC-63. The mechanics noticed something remarkable. Parts were interchangeable, not just between GMC trucks, but between trucks produced by different manufacturers. A GMC carburetor fit the Dodge. Electrical components were standardized across all American military vehicles. Even tires were the same size and specifications. The Wehrmacht had never achieved this level of standardization, which meant that while an American supply depot could service any vehicle from any manufacturer, German supply depots were trapped in a labyrinth of incompatibility and shortage. The Red Ball Express, the legendary truck convoy system that supplied advancing American forces, began operations on August 25, 1944, with nearly 6,000 vehicles. Remarkably, 75% of the drivers were African American servicemen, members of segregated units denied combat positions but essential to the logistics operation. These drivers, many without previous truck driving experience before being pressed into service, operated in two-man teams making 54-hour round trips from Cherbourg to Chartres, often driving at speeds exceeding 60 miles per hour despite blackout conditions. Military policemen at intersections guaranteed that the trucks didn't have to stop. From August through November 1944, the Red Ball Express delivered approximately 412,000 tons of ammunition, fuel, medical supplies, and rations to 28 Allied divisions. This achievement would have been impossible without the unique characteristics of American truck design and production. Over 500,000 individual GMC trucks provided the mechanical horsepower. The Studebaker US-6, a six-cylinder truck that became famous for its reliability and later saw extensive service with Soviet forces, contributed another 200,000 vehicles to the American logistics network. International Harvester and other manufacturers added tens of thousands more. The total exceeded 2.4 million military trucks produced by American factories during the war, a figure that Germany, Italy, and Japan combined could not approach. On October 3, 1944, the German division's remaining vehicles became stranded when fuel supplies failed to arrive. The horses could forage in the countryside and continue limited operations. The German trucks sat immobile. Meanwhile, American supply operations continued unabated. The logistics system, built on thousands of GMC trucks, delivered fuel reliably to forward units operating hundreds of kilometers from the coast. The contrast was absolute and humiliating. December 1944 brought Hitler's final gamble in the West. The Ardennes Offensive, commonly known as the Battle of the Bulge. The operation's logistics plan relied entirely on capturing American fuel supplies because Germany lacked sufficient reserves to sustain major offensive operations. German soldiers were explicitly ordered to use captured American vehicles whenever possible because German logistics couldn't keep pace with operational requirements. The bitter irony was profound. Germany's last major offensive depended on seizing the very vehicles and fuel that symbolized why Germany was losing the war. The 276th Infantry Division participated in the Ardennes Offensive using their collection of captured American trucks alongside their few remaining Opel vehicles. When the offensive stalled, and it stalled quickly despite initial tactical success, it wasn't primarily because of American combat resistance, though that was fierce and organized, but because German logistics collapsed catastrophically. Panzer divisions abandoned tanks when fuel trucks couldn't reach them. Infantry units without reliable truck support resorted to horse-drawn wagons because motorized transport had broken down. Meanwhile, American supply operations continued with mechanical efficiency. Even as American lines contracted around Bastogne, supply trucks delivering ammunition and fuel kept the defenders supplied. When the counteroffensive began, American logistics supported the advance with an efficiency that German logistics could never match. By January 1945, as the Ardennes offensive failed and German forces retreated, the captured GMC trucks continued to prove their value. They still ran. The Opel trucks, subjected to the same harsh conditions, had mostly broken down. The difference wasn't maintenance philosophy or driver skill. It was design philosophy. The GMC was built to absorb punishment and function despite neglect. The Opel was built to German standards of precision that couldn't tolerate wartime abuse. The mechanics watched American supply operations with professional admiration tinged with despair. American divisions had crossed the Rhine in overwhelming strength. The supply network supporting them was vast, beyond comprehension convoys of hundreds of trucks moving supplies across occupied Germany to forward units. Repair depots maintained spare parts in quantities that exceeded the total inventory of entire German divisions. The system was so efficient that damaged vehicles were often replaced rather than repaired. New trucks arrived faster than repairs could be completed because production continued indefinitely. As German resistance collapsed in the spring of 1945, the 276th Infantry Division surrendered on April 18th. The prisoners were transported to processing centers in American GMC trucks, a final education in American industrial capacity. At processing centers, German mechanics saw motor pools containing hundreds of American trucks. Young American soldiers serviced them with casual efficiency that would have been impossible in the Wehrmacht. Parts were abundant. Tools were readily available. Maintenance manuals were simple enough that soldiers with minimal training could perform complex repairs. A captured German mechanic spoke with an American motor sergeant who was surprisingly willing to engage in conversation. "Your mechanics?" the American asked. "We need mechanics. Can you work on these?" He gestured at the GMC trucks. "Yes, we've maintained several captured ones," the German replied. "Good. The war is over for you guys, but these trucks still need maintenance. I can get you assigned to the motor pool. Better than sitting behind wire." Over the following weeks and months, German mechanics worked alongside American soldiers, maintaining the very vehicles that had helped defeat them. An American sergeant explained the maintenance philosophy with unguarded honesty. "We design everything for speed, quick maintenance, common parts, simple procedures. See this engine? A complete overhaul can be done by a two-man team in 8 hours using field tools. Try doing that with one of your trucks." The German mechanic acknowledged the bitter truth. An Opel engine overhaul requires factory conditions and specialized equipment. We designed for precision. You designed for practicality. "Exactly," the American replied. "In peacetime, your way probably produces better vehicles. In war, our way produces vehicles that keep armies moving. How many of these GMC trucks you think we built? Hundreds of thousands. Over 500,000 of just this model. Then there's the Dodgers, the Studebakers, the Internationals. Millions of trucks total. That's what won the war. Not better equipment, but more equipment than you could ever destroy." The American continued with a candor that was almost casual. "You know what's funny? These trucks aren't that complicated. We used commercial truck technology, barely modified it for military use. The engines are commercial designs. The transmissions are commercial. We just made them rugged and produced them in massive quantities." This was the lesson German mechanics absorbed with complete clarity. America had won not only through industrial capacity, but through a fundamentally different industrial philosophy. The Americans had designed for mass production from the very beginning. They standardized ruthlessly. They prioritized reliability and maintainability over sophistication and performance. They built supply chains that could sustain operations indefinitely because production continued unceasingly. In late 1945, as repatriation began, German mechanics returned to a devastated homeland. Cities were rubble. Factories were destroyed. But everywhere were American vehicles. GMC trucks hauling reconstruction materials, jeeps carrying occupation forces, equipment supporting the beginning of German reconstruction. The former supply officer, now just a civilian, found work at a reconstruction depot in Frankfurt. His experience with American vehicles made him valuable. Training young Germans in vehicle maintenance, he reflected on what the war had taught him. Before the war, we believed German engineering was superior. That quality would overcome quantity. We were profoundly wrong. The Americans understood modern industrial warfare better than we did. They built adequate equipment in overwhelming numbers. They standardized ruthlessly. They designed not for the army we wished we had elite specialists operating perfected machines, but for the army they actually had, millions of ordinary men. The genius wasn't in individual vehicles, but in the system that produced them. By 1947, the Marshall Plan was delivering aid to Germany, transported primarily in American trucks. German mechanics maintained these vehicles, applying lessons learned from years of observation and practice during wartime and captivity. When German industry began rebuilding, many manufacturers incorporated American principles into their designs: standardization, component commonality, and design for manufacturability. Companies like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and rebuilt Volkswagen created vehicles that merged German precision engineering with American mass production techniques. One German consultant, a former Wehrmacht mechanic who had maintained both American and German vehicles during the war, summarized the lesson in a 1967 interview for an automotive trade journal. The GMC truck taught us that in modern warfare, perfection is the enemy of good enough. Germany designed beautiful vehicles that were too complex to produce in necessary quantities and too sophisticated for field maintenance. America designed adequate vehicles that could be produced by the millions and maintained by anyone. We lost not because our engineers were inferior, but because we misunderstood what industrial warfare required. The story of Wehrmacht mechanics and the GMC truck is ultimately about learning through defeat. They believed in German superiority, in precision over quantity, in engineering perfection over mass production. American trucks, simple, abundant, reliable, taught them otherwise. That knowledge, painful in its acquisition, became invaluable in reconstruction, helping transform Germany from a defeated enemy into a prosperous ally. The GMC CCKW remained in American service until the 1960s, a testament to its robust design and timeless engineering philosophy. Many served even longer in Allied militaries. The Opel Blitz, despite being an excellent vehicle and successful design, had become a symbol of Germany's industrial shortcomings during the war. German rebuilding incorporated both traditions: the precision and engineering quality for which Germany was famous, combined with the mass production and standardization that had proven superior in industrial warfare. The mechanics who examined that first captured GMC in August 1944 had understood immediately what it represented. They had seen the future and Germany's past. American industrial philosophy developed in the automotive plants of Detroit and refined through decades of mass production had proven itself the superior approach for modern warfare. The GMC CCKW wasn't merely a truck. It was a teacher of hard lessons about industrial warfare, about design philosophy, and about a principle that would echo through military science for generations to come. Quantity, properly harnessed and intelligently deployed, possesses a quality all its own.